Hey, and welcome to another Tech Tuesday. This is Chad from Ascension Worship. Over the next few weeks, we're going to talk about how to get your church into in-ear monitors. To get that kicked off, we're going to start today by talking about how do auxiliary mixes work.
Hey, what do you say? Yes, it's that time again. It's Tech Tuesday.
So an aux mix is just a mix outside of your main set of speakers that the crowd is hearing. For example, if you're sending a signal off for someone's in-ears, stage monitors on stage, maybe a effects unit, or like we talked about last week, maybe you're sending off a separate signal that is going to go to the subwoofers or to a different room of the church. Those are all auxiliary mixes. It's something separate from your main left and right. So we're going to take a look today at a typical auxiliary send on a channel strip. We're looking at an analog strip today. If you notice on here, we've got 6 different knobs, and they're broken into 2 groups. We've got one group of 4 and another group of 2. And underneath each of these groups, you have a button that says post if the button's not pressed in, or pre if the button is pressed in. So a lot of people get confused as to what this means. What this is saying, so let's imagine this is a drum kit we're looking at here. Maybe it's an electronic drum kit, so it's just one channel. And you're sending a signal to the drummer's ears on this this knob here. If the fader is set, halfway, it doesn't matter. It can be halfway, all the way down, doesn't matter. Wherever this knob is set to, that's the amount of volume that would be going to the drummer's ears, because it would be pre-fade if you have it set that way. Now, if you have it set post-fade, then that would mean as you turn the fader up and down for that channel, it would get louder and quieter in the drummer's ears. Now, that's not ideal, because if you're a drummer and you're on stage listening, and this goes for any instrument, drums, vocals, whatever, it's frustrating if, as a sound man is doing his job during sound check and turning things up and down to hear how they sound in relation to one another, if all of a sudden your mix is changing all over the place. So that's why you would want your ears to be pre-fade, so in this case with the button pressed down, so that once you have that mix set, your fader won't be affecting what's going to the ears. Now, other things will affect it, such as your EQ, your compression, your gain. All those are very important, and if you're not familiar with what they do, go watch the previous episodes about each of those. And down here, again, these can be pre or post, but typically you would set these to be post, so the button out would go to things like your effects units. So let's say you're sending this to a reverb. As you turn the drums down, you would want the reverb to go down with it so it sounds natural. But if you had it set to pre-fade, then the fader would not affect that channel. So if you turn the drums down, the reverb would remain, which would be very annoying, and you'd lose your mix all the time. So things like that. So your reverbs, your delays, your sends to other rooms, your subs. If you remember when we talked about last week, you need your mix going to your subwoofers to be post fade. Otherwise, if you were to turn down the drum kit, you would still hear the thud of the subs going, because they would be unaffected by the fader if they were pre-fade. But by sending them post fade, then your subs would turn down as you turn the fader down, so it would sound natural all the way through everything you're sending it to. So we're going to take a quick look at that, do an example. So this is pretty much talking about what we just said. We're going to be listening to a drums recording that we have here, and it's going to be sending off to a couple different locations. I'm going to send it to what would kind of represent the in-ear mix for the drummer. We're going to have a main left and right mix, so we can kind of hear what would be heard by the crowd. And then we're going to also send it off to a reverb, which will be post-fade as well, so you can hear exactly what we're talking about. All right, let's take a look. So I've got a drum loop running in the background, and these are all kind of representing our diagram that we have here. So as I turn the drums up, you're going to hear it get louder in the main left right, and that's the only thing that we're going to hear it through at the moment. So obviously that's post fade, because as I turn the fader up and down, it's getting louder and quieter in that mix. So now I'm going to turn the fader all the way down, and we're going to turn up the monitors. So this would be what the drummer would be listening to, either in ears or on stage with a stage wedge, whatever you have. This is pre-fade, so even though my fader is down, you'll start to hear it coming through. Now check this out. I'm going to turn off my main left right for a moment. And as I turn this fader up and down, you see it's having no effect on the volume we're hearing, because right now we're just listening to the monitor on stage. So that's a pre-fade mix. It's affected by the volume that I use, that I turn that knob up and down. And of course it's affected by your gain, but it is not affected by the fader. So now we're going to take a look at some effects. I'm going to turn our main left right back on, because that's how you would hear your effects. And then I'm going to turn my reverb up, and notice we're not hearing anything yet. That's because it's post fade. Until I turn my drums up, you're not going to hear that. So as I turn the drums up, now I can use this fader to adjust how loud the reverb is. We're going to make it a little bit ridiculous so you can hear what's going on. And notice as I turn the drums down, the reverb goes down as well. Up, and the reverb comes up. Down, and the reverb comes down. And again, just to show you why you would not want that to be pre-fade, I have the same exact reverb set up over here on a pre-fade send. And notice, even though my drums fader is down, we're hearing that reverb come up. So even if you got a perfect mix, let's say you're happy with that, if you were to turn your drums down, that reverb's still going, and you can't have that. So this has been a real quick explanation of how pre and post fade mixes work. There are some deeper concepts available on certain digital boards that we can talk about in the next few weeks. But this is just to get you going, to understand why you'd want to pick pre or post depending on what you're working on. So real quick recap. Pre-fade is going to be for things that you do not want the fader to affect. So your mixes for like your in-ears and your stage mixes for wedges, that kind of thing. Post-fade, the second major one, is going to be for things that you do want the fader to affect. So that's going to be for your effects, your recordings, and any kind of other rooms that you're sending to that you would want to turn up and down as you turn your fader up and down. And again, you can use the actual knobs for the sends to adjust how much is going there, but your fader and that knob will work together in that case to determine that volume. Again, this is Chad from Ascension Worship. I hope this has been helpful for you and your team. Come back here every Tuesday for new information.